So, happy Thursday. We're going to do the recap for last Thursday's game. And again, I do apologize for the delay. Nasty little bug just kind of sidelined me, but thankfully not COVID. So the answer to last Thursday's game was Cabernet Sauvignon from St Estephe. And often I don't go too particular with looking for the benchmark region, because if you're doing an exam, you're tasting the wines, you're writing your notes, you come to the conclusion that, yeah, this is a Cab, this is from Bordeaux, somewhere in the Médoc, and you kind of go anywhere from Graves to Pouilly, Saint-Julien, you're going to get just about all the marks you can get. You know, just exactly nailing the wine is always such a small part of the amount of marks that you can get. It's really more about your notes, more about your reasoning that kind of leads you to a different area. But the reason why I wanted to highlight St Estephe is because of the wine that I featured in the picture for the recap, the Col Labouré from St Estephe. You know, it's a kind of a smaller classified growth, but it's a wine that apparently the examiners love. And I mean love. If you look back at some of the previous exam wines that for the WSET Diploma D3 unit that were published, four times in the last 6 years, they featured the 2010 vintage of that exact wine on exam. And they featured it in multiple ways. It was in the mixed bag, it was in the Cabernet Sauvignon grape flight, and it was in a Bordeaux regional flight. So, you know, most likely the examiners probably got a really killer deal on the 2010 vintage, and that's why they had the quantities to feature it. But really what that does tell you is that the examiners have a lot of faith in this producer for producing a style of wine that is very benchmark for Cabernet Sauvignon or that Bordeaux style blend from that region, that there's really good traits on it. So I went, and once I saw that in the previous exam wines, I went to seek out I tried to find the exact 2010 vintage. All I could find was a 2014, and it was freaking delicious. So really recommend getting that producer, and I'll explain a little bit more to it after I do the recap here. But let's do here the recap of what the clues were from last Thursday's game and kind of see what would be hinting towards Cab, and in particular, a Bordeaux style blend that has a fair amount of Merlot in it, like these ones from St Estephe. So let's go with the clues. Clue 1, black currant, dark fruit, kind of a tart dark fruit. Black currant is usually a big red flag for Cab. And I know that black currant is not something that, especially for Americans, are really super, familiar with. In the UK, my lord, there's black currant drinks, there's candies made out of black currant. So if you get an opportunity to search on Amazon, for some of the black currant candies, I think you can get some of those UK candies even in the US. But it is worth being familiar with what black currant is, because it does, you taste it and you're like, yeah, this is Cab. It's kind of like the vague gooseberries note. It's like you always hear gooseberries with New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and you're like, what the frick is a gooseberry? And then you actually taste one, and you're like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see what this is like. So that was clue 1, black currant. Clue 2, red plum. And this is where I'm starting to hint towards this being a blend, because red plum is usually more of a Merlot-y note than a Cab note. But it is a note that you will find in Bordeaux, which is a blend. For left bank, more Cab usually, but a good amount of Merlot, and that amount of Merlot is increasing. So file that away. Clue number 3, black cherries. So right now you're seeing a mix of red and black fruit. So that's always something that I encourage you to pay attention to when you're jotting down your notes, because that tells you something. It tells you that you have a climate that probably has a mix of influence. Warm, but some cooling influence. And it can also hint at the nature of the grape too. But climate is a really good clue to start thinking about when you're tasting and you're getting black fruit, getting red fruit, getting blue fruit even. When you see that spectrum, think about what climate influences would give you that spectrum. Clue 4, violets, kind of a blue floral note. It's another thing that I'm kind of subtly hinting towards Merlot there, because that's often a note that Merlot contributes, is some of that floral notes. Clue 5, vanilla bean. So bean, not the extract, so a little higher quality. That should get you thinking towards oak, and a good portion of good quality new oak. Clue 6, I had quite a few clues hidden there. Cedar box, very classic Bordeaux note. Earth, and stones. So there's a lot of clues kind of packed in there, and I wanted to kind of convey the pronounced intensity and the complexity of these Bordeaux wines. So I searched quite a bit to find a clue that hit several of those notes there. So just recap: black currants, red plums, black cherries, violets, vanilla bean, cedar box, earth, and stone. So a lot going on here. Structure clues: deep ruby, pronounced intensity. As you saw from those clues there, definitely very, very pronounced. High acid, high firm tannins. So if you're starting to think cab with those clues, this should kind of really tilt you more towards the old world that emphasizes the acidity and the firmness of tannins versus some of the new world examples from like Napa and Sonoma, which tend to be a little bit softer, riper tannins and maybe a little less acidity. Medium plus body. That was another thing I was kind of being a little deliberate with medium plus body. Full body is certainly possible, but if you took a New World Cab and an Old World Bordeaux blend side by side, you're going to notice a lot more body in that New World, because partly it's the acidity. It's almost like a little mental equation that you can do in your brain of, when you have the higher acidity, that all that acid kind of diminishes the perception of body. So a wine that might seem very lush with the lower acidity and that very full body will seem a little less full bodied when you amp up the acidity. So just kind of remember that. High acid usually diminishes a little of the sense of body. Medium to high alcohol. Obviously, 13.5 is kind of the classic Bordeaux alcohol. Climate change, it's inching up, so you are getting those ones over 14%, quite a bit. And then for context clues, very good to outstanding quality, and premium to super premium price. So if you're thinking Bordeaux, this should probably have eliminated just like your basic Bordeaux Superior. Maybe even give you some reasons to doubt like a basic Médoc. You're probably going more towards the villages with that. But that was a context clues. So with those clues, I wanted you to really get to Cab and get to Bordeaux. If you did that, boom, you did great. With some of the context clues that I did later on, with clues 7 through 10, that was to kind of get you more towards thinking about St Estephe, because that is a really good village to study, because that is almost like what the future of Bordeaux is going towards. And the Collabore wine is a great example of that. So the 2010 vintage that the examiners love, that they featured 4 times in the last 6 years, here's the blend for that one. 65% Cab, 35% Merlot. So more than a third of it was Merlot. So using a lot more Merlot there. 2014, the wine that I had, that again was freaking delicious. If you find that, you'll enjoy it without a doubt. 60% Cab. So a little less Cab, 35% Merlot, 5% Cab Franc. That might be one of the reasons why I loved it. Cab Franc probably added even more of a beautiful note. 2018. So now we're getting closer to now the releases that we see now. 46% Cab. The amount of Cab is sinking. 44% Merlot. That's going up. And then 10% Petit Verdot, a very, very late ripening grape. What does this tell you here from 2010 to 2018? Climate change. Climate change is having a big impact on Bordeaux. So you're seeing more Cab, you're seeing, Cab kind of sharing the stage more with varieties like Merlot. Petit Verdot is joining the party, because those varieties can kind of play around a little bit more with climate change. Yes, Merlot is in, earlier ripening, it's mid-ripening, so it can jack up the sugars, but now with canopy management and where you're choosing to plant, like on those cooler clay soils, you can kind of use that to kind of hedge the bets a little bit on that. In 2020, the newest possible release there, that should be coming out here in a little bit, 48% Cab, 42% Merlot, and then 10% Petit Verdot. So you're seeing the Merlotification, you can say almost, of, even the left bank. So that's why I think finding that this wine, like the Collabore, even if it is a newer vintage, is a really, really good thing to do if you're a student studying blind tasting for Bordeaux. Because the profile Bordeaux is changing a bit. You kind of have that classic benchmark in your mind of what it is, but what you should taste is kind of the reality of a little bit of what it is. And at least here, again, this is a producer that we know the examiners have faith in. So, well worth your time to seek out and to try. That's the recap, and I will get going to today's game. Have a good one.